Why have we come to earth? Do you remember? Why have we taken birth? Do you remember?
Good morning again. So we have a little typo. The actual title is Living in Alignment with Truth, and Lori typed it up as Living in Alightment with Truth. And frankly, I like it. I like it. You know, so, and as we let the light in, up in Seattle, whenever we'd see this, we'd sit there and go, what is that big bright thing in the sky? It's scary. We don't see it very often, but around here we see it a lot, don't we? Although not lately. So living in alignment with truth, and the quote that goes with our teaching today is as we're, and this is still part of this exploring the idea of creating a world that works for all. So it says we see a world, this is from the Centers for Spiritual Living vision for creating a world that works for all, the Global Heart Vision. We see a world in which people live in alignment with their highest spiritual truth. You know, this whole weekend has been kind of filled in a way with that. We started off on Friday with Sue and Charlie and Reverend Barbara Leger and Lynn Fritz presenting their experience at the World Parliament of Religions, where over, I think it was 50 religions, is that correct? 80 religions were there present, all with the idea of living in alignment with spiritual truth. And each of those religions has a different take on what that looks like and the processes and procedures to go with that. But each is working with that idea of living in alignment with spiritual truth. And then yesterday, of course, we had a beautiful service honoring Richard Bay and the passing of Richard Bay. I was laughing because I told Sue afterwards we had 4 different languages being spoken in the sanctuary yesterday. We had, English as usual, but we also had Hebrew. We had Cherokee was spoken, and we had Harley, as in Harley Davidson, spoken. We had a big old Harley Davidson, Richard's former bike, right up here, and as part of the tribute at the end of it, they started the bike up, and so we had Harley in the sanctuary, plus a dog named Harley, too. So, and all of that is in alignment with spiritual truth. What is the highest spiritual truth? What we teach as a higher spiritual truth, and what frankly all religions to some degree or another teach as the highest spiritual truth, is that there is one infinite source. There is one. There is something more than us, right? More than just us. Something more than just this physical reality, this stuff here. There is something more. And so we call it one infinite presence. We call it pure love. We say its nature is pure love. If love exists, then that love has to come from somewhere, and it has to come from the core being of all being. Because otherwise there wouldn't be love, there wouldn't be joy, there wouldn't be all, the beauty, there wouldn't be the intelligence unless that was the nature of the universe itself. We teach that this one source is infinite in its abundance. As a friend of mine used to say, there's so many planets that we could have one for each of us if we really wanted to. We all chose to show up on this planet, 7+ billion of us chose to kind of show up on this planet, so it must be something about getting along with each other and being in community with each other. But there's actually enough that we could all have one for ourselves. There's galaxies upon, and each galaxy has billions of stars, and there's billions of galaxies, and now scientists tell us that there's multiverses, multiple of these universes, which is still, to me, still within the whole oneness. But all of this, there's this multiplicity, there's this abundance of the expression. There's this, since spirit is infinite, whatever it expresses infinitely, right? So there isn't a limit to it. There's an infinite expression of whatever it's expressing. So if it's love, there's pure infinite love. If it's wealth, there's pure infinite wealth. If it's life energy, there's pure infinite life without limit. We know that this one expresses itself in multiplicity. Do you know how? Look around. Okay? It It expresses itself in multiplicity. It's not a rubber stamp that comes out, with everything the same. This is not the assembly line, the Ford, Motor Company assembly line. Diversity is the divine nature. Diversity is the divine nature with an underlying oneness or unity. In Sharif Abdullah's book, Creating a World That Works for All, he talks about being in a project, working on a project in Sri Lanka, and the Sri Lankan, and the way they fed the people at the end of it, and there were Sri Lankans who were there working, and then there were people from all over the other, the rest of the world who were there. The people who were from all over the rest of the world got china plates, forks, and knives and all that stuff, and they got platters of food. There was enough food for each person there to have basically 2 meals at each table. Tons of food. The Sri Lankans got ceramic bowls, and they went up to the kitchen to get their bowls filled. Now, he said the Westerners looked at this and said, this isn't right. Why are we treating the Sri Lankans different than the rest of us? And what he said was, what they didn't notice was the process was working just fine. Everybody was happy because that's how the Sri Lankans normally do it. And also, if you come to their house, they normally give you an abundance of food. And so it worked in that situation, even though it didn't work by our perception. We had our perspective of, well, we're discriminating against them, we're treating them differently, and they weren't feeling discriminated against or treated differently at all. So sometimes how that diversity works, how that diversity looks, is not the way, guess what, that we think it looks or works. So we get to break our paradigm. But that diversity, that honoring of the diversity, that honoring of each and every culture and each and every unique person and individual is part of the divine whole. This one operates through law or principle. There's a process through which it is. And the primary law that we teach is cause and effect. Now, I'm teaching the Quick Start class right now, which is an introduction to our teaching. And we're talking about spiritual principles. And all the spiritual principles always come back to some aspect of cause and effect. If we talk about the law of attraction, if we talk about the law of attention, if we talk about the law of reciprocity, if we talk about any of those laws, they still are just variations on the law of cause and effect. And the law of cause and effect is taught in virtually everything that we've seen. As you reap, so shall you sow. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. What you put out comes back to you. All of that is the law of cause and effect. And so this is the spiritual truth that we're looking to explore and to live in. There's a difference between knowing that that's the spiritual truth and living that as spiritual truth, right? So living means we practice it and we apply it. And there it is where we have our challenges sometimes, right? Yeah, I know I do. Ernest Holmes tells us that we approach love through law. See, the infinite is love, but it operates through law. What that means is that when we align with the law, as we align more and more with the law, we are more open to the giving and receiving of greater love. As we're moving in alignment with how the universe works, we get to experience its nature of love. When we're out of alignment with it, we feel out of the love. I'm teaching a class on Troward right now, the creative process in the individual, and he has a wonderful example that when we're operating in opposition to the law, when we're operating in opposition to the way that God operates, the way that the universe operates, it feels like the universe is the negative and we're the positive. It feels like the universe is going in the wrong way. You ever had that feeling? Everything's against me. Maybe it's because I'm going the wrong way. Okay? So that's a clue for when we get this feeling that everything is against us. Maybe we should stop what we're doing and say, what is the spiritual truth here? What is the divine operation? What is the direction that the universe would really be moving? There was a young man who came to the teacher Jesus who asked him how to follow him. And the first thing that Jesus said was, follow the laws. Follow the laws. See, if we're not in alignment with the laws, we can't do anything more. We have to start there. We have to start by being in alignment with that law of cause and effect, in alignment with that, as we sow, shall we reap. Okay? What is it that I'm putting out? There's great examples of studying the laws. we need to learn the law of music before we can really make our own unique music, right? We have to understand how music works. We have to understand how painting works. Right now, Cynthia's in a painting class. Shari Wyndham is teaching a wonderful watercolor class. And the people in that class are learning, how does paint work? How does water work? How does that interaction, how does it work with a paper? How does demonstrating putting light and shadow and shape and all that on the paper work? And you have to know how that works. You have to follow the laws of that before you can start to expand and get wild and creative. Okay? Electricity. Would you hire an electrician who doesn't understand the laws of electricity to wire your house? No. Okay? Even she knows that. No, you won't. So you have to understand these laws before you get wild and creative and start to expand on them. People who come into our teaching and we teach them the 5-step method of prayer, the spiritual mind treatment, oftentimes the first reaction is, oh, that feels so mechanical. Oh, I'm having such difficulty with it. Can I just do it my way? And the answer is yes, you can, but how has your way gotten it, so far? And secondly, it's a process, it's a well-designed process that guides us into a deeper spiritual connection with our higher self. Would you want to learn more about the laws of how that works and the process of how that works before you start to say, this doesn't work for me? Do we take the time to learn the laws? Do we take the time to understand it? So it's taking the time to understand, and then as we, to the best of our ability, begin to apply these spiritual truths into our lives and into our interactions in the world. We have to master each level of life to move on to the next. I have to learn how to be who I am at this level of my living before I can move on to the next. See, to become a minister, I had to learn how to become, first of all, a religious scientist. I had to take, just like many of you, the core classes, a couple of years worth. In my case, a lot of years worth. I was a slow learner. And then I had to take a couple of years of practitioner training to learn how to become a practitioner. And then I had to take 4 years worth of ministerial school to learn how to be a minister. And then I had to go out in the field to find out that I didn't have a clue of how to be a minister. Okay? And I'm still learning how to be a minister. And so we master each of those levels. We have to master being a student before we can move on to the next level. And then once we get there, we have to let go of the rules of how the previous level worked in order to master the next level of existence. So what worked in our previous history will not carry us into the next chapter. When we look at how the world works, how we have done it in the past will not take us into our next level of living. How we've done it in the past will not create a world that works for all. This week I posted the city of Seattle joined a number of Western cities that are suing Monsanto Corporation for their collective pollution of everything. And I made a comment that this was an example of the merger culture saying no to the breaker culture. And then the next day I read some Troward. If you want to rearrange your thinking, read Troward. And I realized that in a way that lawsuit was still working with breaker culture. It's still kind of fighting, it's still us versus them, and that consciousness doesn't create a world that works for all. Now, if you ask me personally, I think Monsanto is kind of the epitome of a breaker culture corporation that practices separation and not enough. I won't get into that a whole lot, but that's, but fighting them is not the application of what's the new consciousness that's going to take us into something else. I'm not necessarily sure what is, but I know that that one doesn't work. I've talked before about the 4 kingdoms of consciousness. The first kingdom is where we feel like a victim to life. Life is just happening to me, and I'm just here like an oyster at the bottom of the ocean. It's just coming in on me. Okay, and the way to move from that consciousness into the next level of being is by letting go of blaming. Blaming is, all that out there is at fault. That carries us into the next level of consciousness, which is self-mastery. I happen to life. I make life happen. I start, this is the, if it is to be, it's up to me. I'm going to make it happen sort of consciousness, which is a wonderful step forward from victim consciousness, right? And it's one of the first things that we teach when we get into religious science is how to take control of and make your life work for yourself. But guess what? Eventually that doesn't work. We outgrow that, and the very process of control has to be let go of before we can move into the next level. Because the next level is, how can I co-create my life with the infinite? And me being in control and shutting everything else out doesn't work in that realm, right? And so we have to learn a new process, and then even that one, because the fourth kingdom of consciousness is unitive consciousness. Life and I are one. And in a way, there's no life and I, there's just life as me as life. Okay? And so we have to let go of any idea of separation. So even the idea that I am co-creating with the universe, there's not an I left to co-create with the universe. There's no separation left anymore. So in each level, in each stage of our being, we have to let go of what worked in the previous stage. And that's hard because oftentimes we have to let go of it before we know what is the next behavior, what is the next process. So the kind of thinking that created our current world won't take us to our next level of evolution. If we contemplate or believe in a law of not enough, okay, we're going to continue to experience not enough. It becomes our law of being. This is that reading from the start. Spirit creates by self-contemplation. Therefore, what it contemplates itself as being, that it becomes. We are each individualized spirit. Therefore, whatever we contemplate ourselves as being, we become. And so if we contemplate ourselves as being aging, sick, or prone to sickness, available for poverty, available for death, or say any of those laws are true, which is not what pure spiritual law teaches, we allow that into our life. As we sit here and say, it's cold season or flu season, we're creating the law of, or the experience of, having the cold, having the flu, or it's a possibility for us to get. And we do this in consciousness. As soon as we say that's a possibility, we start to open up. If we contemplate the law of lack, we open ourselves to the experience of lack. If we believe in poverty as an actual spiritual truth or as an actual reality, we open the door for poverty to have to show up somewhere because we say, yes, this is part of my structure of the world, my belief in the world. Okay? When I start to close it down and say, wait, this is a universe of infinite abundance and that's all there is. You see, that's different than believing in lack and limitation. Whenever I get stuck financially, I sit there and I have to back off and say, wait a minute, time out. I live in a law of infinite abundance. I live in a universe of infinite abundance. If I'm not experiencing that at the moment, then I am doing something to take myself out of alignment with that. But the law of being is the law of infinite abundance. If I'm sick, the law of being is the law of perfect health. If we contemplate a law of separation or competition, we create that. If we believe finally in the law of powerlessness, who am I? I'm just one person. I can't change the world. I've got nothing here to do to give. If I believe that, I create that as my being. So it's how we use these laws. It's not just knowing the spiritual truth. It takes more than just knowing that I am one of an infinite presence that is infinite love. It's then also applying it. And sometimes that gets tough because this right here in our face looks pretty loud, right? Have you noticed? Thank you. So our goal is to remember that we're God in form. You're God in form, I'm God in form. That person sitting next to you is God in form. Remind them of that. Look at the person next to you and say, you're God in form. And then when they say it back to you, absorb it. Take it in. That's the truth of who we are. Anybody get missed? Marilyn, you're God in form. Damien, Michael, you're God in form. You guys may have covered each other. If we missed anybody, what's your name back there in the... I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. Cynthia, you're God informed. I'm God informed, splattered all over that back wall right now. No, she loves me. Our power no longer comes from working on the world of effects because we're now working at the level of cause. If the universe works on cause and effect, the place where we're going to start to work is the level of cause. And consciousness, our consciousness, is cause. We are individualized creative centers of the universe. Whereas the Infinite One creates the universe, we are individualized centers that create the universe as we see it, as we experience it, as it's going to move forward. We have choice. See, at one level, the law doesn't care what's being created out of. Just like electricity doesn't care how you use it, water doesn't care how you use it. They all just follow principle. And so the universe, this infinite energy, does not care, doesn't have an agenda how I use it. But guess what? I do. Again, Schroeder calls that the personal factor. I introduce my personal factor. I introduce my uniqueness into this process, and the universe evolved this uniqueness that's known as you and me. The universe is taking the time and the energy and the thought to be you right now. Just in case you think you're a little unimportant speck on a little unimportant speck of a planet in a little unimportant galaxy, okay? That's a great way to get humble. But it's also, and in one way it's the truth, but in another way it's a fact, but it's not the truth. Okay? Each of us is God informed. Because the infinite chose to be us. So if we choose to change the outer, we have to begin by changing the inner. If I want to change what's out there, I have to begin by changing, that's old, was that Prince who, looked in the mirror? Michael Jackson, thank you. The man in the mirror. Okay? And then, secondly, we begin to align with others who are also becoming clear and taking a look within themselves. And when we can do that, we can create the experience of having a shift in the world. Okay? So that's our goal this week. That's our practice simply this week. Is to practice contemplating, visualizing a world that works for all. To take some time out of your day to say, what is a world the world that works for all? What does it feel like? I may not have a clue what it actually looks like in the processes of it, but I know what it feels like, and what it feels like is love. What it feels like is compassion. What it feels like is a unity of consciousness. What it feels like is a harmony. And will I take the time to both align myself with that, and then to see that as the reality in the world around me? And to visualize that. We have tremendous creative power if we'll use it. We have people who use visualization to heal their bodies. We have people who use visualization to create jobs, relationships, anything they want to. I was teasing with Sue yesterday. I said, I've been visualizing for a while this church being absolutely full. And what did we get yesterday? Absolutely packed, full church. Now I just have to get it on Sunday mornings, but, but we're working on it. And the attendance is going up, too. What's that feeling? What is that we want to experience and visualize? And use that power that you have to start to create a world that works for all in your local level. Because what it takes is a localized application of that. How can I be a place that I am a world that works for all in my own world? And what we do is when we do that, we put the collective worlds together, and what do we get? We get a global world that works for all. So that's my invitation for you as the spiritual practice. Just one this week. Practice visualizing that, practice feeling that, practice being that. And the best time to practice it is when you don't feel like it. When you're up against something or other, say, wait a minute, I'm going to go back to spiritual truth. I'm going to go back to remembering this is an effect. This is an effect. And I operate from cause. Ernest Holmes, one of my favorite sayings of Ernest Holmes is, God plus one is a majority. When I align with that infinite power, when I align with the infinite power, then the infinite power is available to me to do whatever needs to be done. So I invite you this week to align with that. I want to close with a quote from the Science Mind. Whatever is true of the universe as a whole must also be true of the individual as some part of the whole. Each individual is evolved from the universe as a self-conscious thinking center of spiritual living, and as such must, in nature and being, reproduce the universe. We live in a universe, we live in an ecology that works. There's a holistic ecology that, if left alone, works great. And we are the place that can reproduce that. We are the place that individualizes that. So let's move into prayer and see if we can align with that. So take a breath in, take a breath out, and allow myself to remember that there is that one infinite source, that one infinite presence. Only one. That presence is pure love. That presence is abundant good. That presence is life, energy, completely free in its expression. That one is all there is. And because it is all there is, I am one of that one. I am one of an infinite presence, and therefore I have the qualities and the nature of that infinite presence also. I have the creativity, I have the love, I have the power, I have the life energy that I get to direct in my world. And so I speak my word that I use that life energy in alignment with the laws of the universe, in alignment with the harmony, the love, the wholeness of this universe. That I use that for my own self, first of all, in creating a life, a body, a circumstance, a situation that works well for me. Not as an individualized separate unity or separate organism, but in a unity for me as a whole with the global oneness. So I allow that infinite presence to express as me. And then I allow that infinite presence to express out beyond me. And I'm the place where its nature is enacted and replicated and supported everywhere. Everywhere. I allow myself to be used by this highest intelligence, by this infinite love, by this universal wisdom and presence. I open into an alignment with that here and now. And in gratitude for all the good that comes out of that, in alignment for all this alignment and all those who are like me aligning with that infinite presence, I am grateful. I am ever so grateful. And so I release this word spoken and the consciousness within this word, the knowing within this word, into a law that manifests it into form, into expression, into experience on this human level in the most beautiful, perfect ways possible, because that is the simple function of the law, is to manifest the word of the divine. And it is done here and now, and so it is. Thank you.